How's everybody doing? Everybody hear me okay?
Stick really close to the microphone.
Everybody hear me okay? Oh. All right, well, it's great to be here, to see everyone, to be among progressives. It's interesting, being progressive, you know, is a very difficult thing. It's not easy to be progressive. We take a stand on issues. And nobody likes to take a stand on issues because it's polarizing. So when you're progressive, for example, you don't say that all lives matter. Because if you're progressive, you understand that in America, black lives, for example, never mattered. And they still don't matter. And brown lives and Muslim and Arab lives in America don't matter. Which is why I wear this shirt. It's not because all lives don't matter. It's because here in America, black lives never mattered and they still don't. And as progressives, we need to talk about that. It also means that we take a stance and we polarize people. And of course, like I said, people don't like polarization. They think it's not nice. So we understand that resistance is not terrorism. Occupation is terrorism. Bombing cities and killing civilians is terrorism. Oppression is terrorism. Resistance is not terrorism. Resistance is a legitimate response to oppression. Resistance is a legitimate response to occupation. It's a legitimate response when somebody takes over your land and takes over your lives and takes over your homes. You know, I was told, somebody mentioned earlier to me that there are at least 4 different stalls here that have something to do with Palestine. And yet Americans are so ill-informed about Palestine and Israel. A lot of people don't realize that Americans give Israel $10 million every single day. Every single day, $10 million. Out of its taxpayers' money. This is foreign aid. Israel is a fully developed country that doesn't need foreign aid. Yet Americans give Israel $10 million every single day. There was an item in the news a couple of weeks ago that America committed to give three African countries $40 million over 3 years. $40 million to 3 African countries, which, as we know, African countries are not developed, over 3 years. Israel gets $40 million every 4 days. So no one is on the fence. No one in this country is neutral unless we take an active stance. Unless we are really progressives and take an active stance on this issue, we are on the side of Israel, which means we're complicit with horrifying crimes. So it's important for Americans to get informed. It's important to be informed. Maybe you agree with, maybe you think it's okay to give $10 million of our money to Israel every single day. But you're not going to know unless you get informed. And the level of ignorance in this country on this issue is shocking. Like I said, particularly since so much money is given to Israel, go to one side of this conflict, of the Israeli-Palestinian question. So as progressives, we have to take a stance. We have to investigate, we have to learn, and we have to take a stance. And we have to understand that on certain issues, it's okay to be polarized. I have a friend that says, I oppose racism. What is your point of view? The issue of Palestine is an issue that polarizes, and it should polarize. On the issue of racism, on the issue of oppression, on the issues of injustice, we need to be polarized. We need to take a stand. Or else, we are complicit with the crimes of the oppressor. We are complicit with the crimes of the occupier. I often like to ask people, are Israel and Palestine 2 different countries? Are Israel and Palestine 2 different states? And a lot of people don't know the answer. And it's confusing. It's very confusing, first of all, because we hear Israel, Palestine, Israel, Palestine. And we hear people that have been there say, I've been to Israel and I've been to Palestine. And we've heard that several European countries have recognized the state of Palestine. And even the Palestinian flag is now being flown in front of the UN for the first time. Yeah. Mabruk. So it's confusing, but I have to say, I was born and raised in Jerusalem. I'm an Israeli, of course. I travel, I go there a lot. I'm there a lot. I travel up and down the country. I haven't seen this place called Palestine. The Palestinian state. What are its boundaries? Who are the citizens? What is the capital city of Palestine? I haven't seen it. I haven't seen any boundaries. I haven't seen any sense that there is a state of Palestine. I've seen Palestinians. I've seen Palestinians throughout the entire country. But everywhere I go, it's Israel. There's one government, that's the Israeli government. There's one army, that's the Israeli army. And we've also heard that there have been peace talks going on for several decades now. Well, peace talks means there are two countries at war, two armies at war. Well, where is this Palestinian army? I haven't seen it. Where are these two countries that are at war? And when we look at the map, we see one country. Some call it Israel, some call it Palestine, but it's the same country. And people also wonder, why is it that these peace talks are not working out? What's wrong with these people? Decades and decades go by, and they can't make peace, they just can't get along. What's wrong with them? Well, peace is not the issue, and peace talks is not the direction to go, because it's not a war. It's not a war of two countries. It's not a war of two armies. The issue of Palestine is the issue of occupation, oppression, and racism. That is the issue of Palestine. And if we want to see an end to the conflict in Palestine, we need to look for a way to resist the oppression, to resist the occupation, and seek justice. Once the resistance is successful, once justice is achieved, we will see peace. And this is true everywhere. We saw the signs, I'm sure many of you saw the signs from Ferguson to Palestine, no justice, no peace. There will be no peace unless there is justice. The issue of Palestine is an issue of values. It's not a political issue. You either accept colonialist, racist regimes or you oppose them. If you accept them, then you can accept the state of Israel. If you oppose them, then you have to reject the state of Israel. It's a polarizing issue and you have to take a stand. We cannot have it both ways. Now, people always seek to find the common denominator. Now, people also want to find out how this began, because if we understand how it began, we might understand how to resolve this. And I would say it's fair to claim that the reason there's a conflict in Palestine has everything to do with colonialism and racism that were brought to Palestine from Europe, just like in many other places around the world. So in Israel, they talk about this thing called the Balfour Declaration. You may have heard of the Balfour Declaration. They treat it in Israel as though it is one of the 10 Commandments. The Balfour Declaration. Every street in Israel has a Balfour Street. I mean, every city has a Balfour Street. And the Balfour Declaration was a declaration made by Lord Balfour, who was the Foreign Secretary of Great Britain, to a Jewish millionaire by the name of Rothschild, whereby the British government promises to allow for a Jewish homeland to be established in Palestine. Neither one of these two people lived in Palestine or had anything to do with Palestine. Basically, one white racist offering another white racist a country that belongs to somebody else. But since it was a country of non-Europeans, it didn't matter. This was the way the world was run. Then several decades later, we have this issue, this partition plan that the United Nations came up with, which says we'll give a part to the Palestinians, a part to the Arabs, a part to the Jews, and all will be well. But they came up with this absurd plan that gives the majority, the larger portion of the country, to the Jewish community. Now, many people don't know this, but in 1947-48, when this plan, or when this resolution was passed, there was a very small Jewish community in Palestine. This was mostly my grandparents' generation who immigrated, came to colonize, and my parents who were born there. That was a generation, about 500,000 people. You see, many people think that the Holocaust survivors, this was several years after the Holocaust, that Holocaust survivors all went to Palestine, all went to Israel. This is not true. The vast majority of Holocaust survivors rejected Israel. Only a very small fraction of Holocaust survivors actually went to Israel. And then many of them, after a while, left as well for all kinds of reasons. So this was a very small community of mostly immigrants who just came off the boat, basically, and their children. The indigenous native Palestinian population was 3 times as many, over 1.5 million people. And they were allocated the smaller part of the country. So when the United Nations partitioned the land, they gave the larger portion to a small community of Jews and left a small portion for the local native Arab population. And you have to wonder, did anybody really think this was going to work? I mean, they must have been either drunk or stupid or both. And of course, it didn't work. Now, here's something that's very important to understand, and this is why you have to pick sides. You have to pick sides on the issue of Palestine. There is no way to bridge it. Because from that moment on, we have 2 narratives that emerge. And those 2 narratives are the 2 main pillars of this issue. You have the Palestinian narrative of what happened in 1948. You've got the Israeli narrative, or the Zionist narrative of what happened in 1948, and they are diametrically opposed. Not only are they opposed, but the actual identity, what it means to be an Israeli, is directly connected to that narrative. And Israelis will defend this narrative with everything they've got. The narrative is the holy grail of Israel. Because this narrative is the justification, is what provides the legitimacy for the existence of the state of Israel. Now, being an Israeli, that was the narrative I learned, and of course in America that's the narrative that is taught as well, which says that in 1947, after the United Nations passed this resolution and basically reaffirmed the right of Jews to return to their historic homeland and create the state of Israel, the Arabs attacked the Jewish population in an attempt to kill and destroy them, just like the Nazis did before them and many others did before them. Thankfully, because we, the new Jews, we the Israelis, we're the descendants of King David who defeated Goliath, and we're the descendants of the Maccabees who defeated great empires, we were able to defeat these Arabs. And we conquered the land. And we established a state for the Jewish people in their historic homeland once again after 2,000 years. You tell me if this doesn't sound like a whole new chapter in the Old Testament. This is so heroic. It is so romantic. How can you possibly argue with such a powerful, powerful narrative? We learn it in our churches. We learn it in schools. We learn it in synagogues. This is the narrative. And it sits very well with people who like to read the Bible literally. On the other side, we have a story that describes ethnic cleansing and terrorism. Now, how do you bridge this gap? Heroism and revival of the Jewish people, ethnic cleansing and terrorism. That is why you have to be informed, because you have to pick a side. Now, what's interesting is this. About 20 years ago, several Israeli historians, Ilan Pape, that was the main one, you may have heard of him, started looking into the Israeli narrative, and they found some holes in this narrative. And one of the more interesting holes that they found was this. At the end of 1947, or by the end of 1947, the Jewish community in Palestine was able to develop a very strong armed militia, a fighting force of close to 40,000 well-trained men. My father was an officer in that militia. But there was no equivalent on the Palestinian side. In fact, there's never been an organized armed force, a serious armed force. There have been guerrilla here and there, but there's never been a serious organized Palestinian armed force. So if this is true, who are these Arabs that attacked the Jews? And what did they attack with? 6-7 months later, other Arab states decided to intervene in Palestine. So several other Arab armies tried to come into Palestine, but they were defeated very easily by the Israelis, by the Zionists, the Jewish militia. But at that time, there was no Palestinian armed force that could have attacked. And it turns out, it was the Israelis, it was the Jewish militia that began a well-planned, well-thought-out, and well-executed campaign of ethnic cleansing through a massive assault that can only be categorized as terrorism. 12 months, a 12-month-long terrorist attack. Actually, a little bit longer than 12 months. And during those 12 months, the majority of the Palestinian population was forced into exile. Somewhere between 800,000 and 1 million Palestinians were kicked out. Over 500 Palestinian towns and villages were destroyed. The vast majority of Palestinian towns and villages were wiped off the map, completely destroyed. And the state of Israel was established on the ashes of Palestine. Now what's interesting is this: Palestinians have been saying this for decades. Palestinians have been saying this from the beginning. But nobody believed Palestinians. We have to have an Israeli historian tell us this for us to believe it. So once again, you have two narratives. One that talks about ethnic cleansing and terrorism and is verified and again validated by Israeli historians themselves. And you've got this mythical, romantic story of revival and nonsense, which many people like, and very few people want to refute. Without this narrative, without this mythology, Israel loses its legitimacy. Because if we were not the few defending ourselves against the many, if we were not these Jews who came back after the Holocaust and were revived finally, then why are we there? We are just another colonizing, racist, oppressive regime. And we can't allow for that to happen. We can't allow for that to happen. So you'll notice whenever you see Israelis and Palestinians meet, or dialogue groups, or camps for kids, the one thing nobody's allowed to discuss is 1948. Because that is the Holy Grail. We cannot touch it. If you bring it up, you become anti-Semitic, you become a terrorist, and the conversation is over. Without discussing 1948, without recognizing the crime of ethnic cleansing, the brutality of the terrorist attacks that the Palestinians had to endure, there can never be an understanding of the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. Now, let me talk about Gaza for a minute. Part of the problem with this issue is that there's never any context. Suddenly, Israel's attacking Gaza. Suddenly, there's these rockets flying out of Gaza. Suddenly, something happens here. Suddenly, something happens there. There's never any sense of context. Why are things happening? Why are there hundreds of thousands of refugees, poor refugees in Gaza? What is this thing called Gaza anyway? There's never any context. Why is Israel attacking Gaza with such force? Oh, because Hamas is there. The Gaza Strip was established by Israel, defined by Israel, as was the West Bank, by the way. The Gaza Strip was established and defined by Israel as a place to house hundreds of thousands of refugees mostly from the southern part of the country. So refugee camps were created along the city of Gaza. A line was drawn, and this was the Gaza Strip. This was done in the early 1950s, and as soon as the Gaza Strip was established, Israeli forces began attacking and killing civilians in Gaza. This is nothing new. Now they have protective edge, protective this, protective that, all these different names for all these massacres. It began as soon as the Gaza Strip was established, because they were infiltrators. So we had to attack and kill them. Then they became fedayeen. So we had to kill them and attack them because of that. Then they became just plain terrorists. Now they're Hamas. The names keep changing. The technology improved. So whereas in the beginning they only killed several hundred, last summer, right in front of our very eyes, Israel murdered in cold blood over 2,000 Palestinians in Gaza. In front of our very eyes, using American money, using American weapons, using American planes, and with full support of America and Europe. More than 2,000 people murdered in 51 days in front of our very eyes in prime time. Why? Because Hamas. Hamas is the devil, so we can kill 2,000 civilians. But why are they attacking to begin with? Why are they attacking to begin with? Gaza, not a single Palestinian has ever posed a military threat to Israel. Not from Gaza, not from anywhere else. Certainly not Gaza, where the majority of the people are poor refugees. There's never been a tank, an F-16, a helicopter. Why are they attacking with such force? Over 6,000 flyovers, millions of tons of bombs dropped, hundreds of tanks, 40,000 troops were called up as reservists. I was there, I saw the forces go in. I was in Palestine at the time. I drove down to the border with Gaza. You've never